Hi, everyone. Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Sitting, where we talk about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets, a team that is doing very well in the Central Division standings. Early still in the season, well, a quarter of the way in.
Yeah.
Scott Billeck's joining me right now to talk about exactly that. Scott, you did a story about the Jets at the quarter pole. Gotta say, I think most people would be pretty surprised by how well they've done. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of a little surprised, but then, it's funny because you're surprised because of how badly last season went. You're surprised by how quiet kind of the summer went for the Jets. I mean, even Rick Bowness being hired. I know it was kind of this almost tongue-in-cheek comment from Cheveldayoff, this seismic hiring that he made over the summer. And there was a few snickers at the time, and now you're looking at him like, man, like this guy may have been a better fit than anybody else that was out there, from John Torello to Jim Montgomery, to Pete DeBoer to Barry Trotz. I mean, here's a guy who has come in, completely galvanized this team, has them all pointed in the same direction, has instilled a purpose in some that needed a purpose, has instilled confidence in some that needed confidence, has put guys in positions to succeed. Um, you know, and then you look at the record. I mean, now we're 21 games through. The Jets just hammered the the defending Stanley Cup champions, 5-0, completely blanked them. They won their previous game in Chicago 7-2. Yeah, they had a hiccup in Minnesota last week, losing 6-1. Bit of a wake up call, but now the Jets have rattled off 3 straight wins. Teams under Paul Maurice, especially in his waning years of a head coach, did not respond like this. They didn't respond in games like this. They didn't respond after bad losses like this. This team has taken full ownership of where they are. They've taken full ownership of what they do on the ice, what they do off of it. And you're seeing this team is reaping the rewards right now. They're 14-6-1. They're 1 point out of first place in the Central Division. And they only look like they're getting better. If you split the first 10 games and the second 10 games, here is a team that is, you can see they called this a work in progress to start the year. It was almost like this kind of statement that you could kind of hide behind if they went in a bad direction off the start. But instead, this team has just been climbing, and yeah, it's been, I imagine for fans, it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to write about a team that's playing as well as they are, and doing some of the things, and how some of the pieces of this team have really come alive this season, after kind of laying dormant for the last couple of years.
Yeah, pretty impressive because, last year when Kevin Cheveldayoff put this team together and Paul Maurice was still the coach going into that season, a lot of people, and not just people in Winnipeg, had that team on paper pegged as a potential Stanley Cup champion, at least a contender. That simply did not happen. In fact, they went completely in the other direction. And it does sound now like it was a bit of a culture problem. It was a locker room problem. It was a coach connection problem. It was all those things. And it really fell apart. And the fact is, you're right. You go out and you get a guy that's a master communicator and a master teacher like Rick Bowness, and it just seems like that's been the perfect fit for it. You talk to the players, and that's what they say. They say there's a difference in the culture. There's a difference in the locker room. There's a difference in everybody pulling in one direction. And so it shouldn't be that surprising that you take that same core of team from last year and put it into this year, and they're doing so much better, even though they've suffered from some pretty, important injuries.
Yeah.
The Nicolas Ehlers one being the most important one, but certainly the way that Rick Bowness, in my opinion, the thing that he did that has worked out so well, other than just being that great communicator and teacher and that person who helps a locker room grow and be more cohesive, is the activation of the defense. That they're playing better defensively overall by using this activated defense system. And obviously they got great goaltending with Connor Hellebuck, so that helps immensely. But you're just seeing what Josh Morrissey is doing alone. I mean, that guy has always been a very good hockey player. We've known it. But people have often criticized him as not being a true number one defenseman. Well, I don't think anybody's saying that right now. He's the guy deserving of all the minutes. He's putting up the points. He's one of the fastest active player defenseman to reach 20 assists, in a season. Of all the players who are active right now, he's got the third best. I mean, it's pretty impressive that he is able to do this, and he's jumping up. He's so much more confident. He's shooting the puck. He's making great plays all over the ice. And realistically, early on, his name deserves to be in the Norris Trophy conversation. That's pretty impressive. And of course, Connor Hellebuck needs to be in the Vezina conversation.
Yeah.
Cole Perfetti's working his name into the Calder conversation, and I don't see how anybody would not think that Rick Bowness is in the Jack Adams conversation. That's a pretty good start, Scott.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's start with Josh Morrissey here. I mean, I sat down with him about 7 minutes after the game, and I want to say it was Chicago. Just talking about the first half of the season. And one of the things that he said to me, we were just, asking him about, what's changed for you this year? Like, how have you gone from this, you'd get 40 points a year and you'd be a good defenseman and all that and that sort of thing, to now being an elite defender. And he had been that with Jacob Trouba long ago, but kind of got stuck in the mud a little bit because of kind of how, the defense fell apart a few seasons ago, and they were just kind of cycling guys through it with, to play with Josh, kind of dragging him down a little bit. But how has he gone from, a couple of tough years, and obviously his father passed away, and that should be taken into, very high account in terms of, how difficult it was to get to that. But to go from there and then, to come into this season and now being, like you said, third in points, leading the team in points and assists, a point per game player, better than a point per game player right now. How has this happened? And he said it kind of perfect, almost perfectly. He's like, this system is a perfect fit for my skill set. And he's right. I mean, the system where, Rick Bowness training camp, his goal was to have all of his defensive, defensemen activated. They wanted them in on the, they wanted them in on the offensive more. They wanted them driving that play more, and they set a goal of 40 goals. Right now, I mean, they're at Josh has, I think they're at like 10 or so through 40 games. So they're on pace for that. They have roughly 50 points now after Tuesday night's game against the Avalanche. It's better than 2 points a game just from the defenseman. Rick Bowness has been happy with that. At the same time, he also just wants more. So it's interesting with this team how, again, Josh Morrissey has said that Rick Bowness said, I want you in the Norris conversation this season. He told Josh when he came here that when he was in Dallas, they would game plan specifically against Josh Morrissey. I mean, if you want to inflate a guy's ego, that's the way to do it. If you want to give the guy something to strive for, that's the way to do it. The thing about Rick Bowness, and you kind of talked about it, like this has been such a change for this team. Like, the question I asked going into this season in my season preview was, we're going to find out here, how big of an impact can a head coach have on the team? Because as you said, I mean, they basically ran it back this year with the same guys. We were talking last year a lot about this kind of these playoff hopes, potentially Stanley Cup. This team was now set on defense and all that stuff. It didn't work out last year. They have essentially the same guy. You might argue that this team has less skill than it did last year after losing Paul Stastny and Andrew Kopp and losing about 40 goals there and that sort of thing. So it's not surprising, given how these players talk about what Rick Bowness has done, that Mark Scheifele is back to being this two-way centerman. That Josh Morrissey is leading almost leading the league in points, is in the Norris conversation. That Connor Hellebuck feels that the system in front of him, and having sit down one-on-one with him a few weeks ago, that the system is now allowing him to see and read plays better. He knows, like, it's more predictable now. He doesn't have to feel like he's kind of left out on an island all the time. I mean, this you can go to a man in that room, from one guy to the next, to the next, to the next. They all feel like they have a purpose, they have a role in this team. And I mean, you're looking at it. I mean, even look at a guy like Blake Wheeler, stripped of the captaincy. One of the first conversations he had with Rick Bowness was, I'm taking the captaincy away from you. He doesn't even wear a letter anymore. And Blake Wheeler, on Tuesday night against the Colorado Avalanche, I mean, if we always say that Father Time is undefeated, well, Blake Wheeler is putting up a hell of a fight in that regard. Blake Wheeler has responded very well to what happened. There's no doubt in my mind that that hit him hard, that stung. That's a tough thing for anybody to lose any sort of promotion, any sort of position, and anywhere in life. Blake Wheeler has gone out, and he said it last night. He's just kind of happy to be playing in the league in an important role with the team, and he's playing with guys, especially Cole Perfetti. You said it too. I mean, we're going on here because we could talk forever. Cole Perfetti, Rookie of the Year. Jack Adams, Rick Bowness. How do you not have them, near the top right now? The only other guy that I think that would be up there right now with Rick Bowness is Jim Montgomery in Boston, the way that the Boston Bruins are going right now. But yeah, like I'm saying, like there's so many storylines with this team in terms of how people have elevated their game this season and been put into positions. And to me, again, it all stems from the top. It stems from Rick Bowness and his coaching staff, and it just trickles down. It's had this cascading effect on this team that's been so fresh to kind of watch, because it got stale there for a couple of years for sure. And now this is a new team that had a fresh set of eyes kind of put on it, and they've gone from there and they've gone out, and they look like a team now that can compete with any team in the NHL. They don't play to the level of the bad teams anymore. They play at their level, and whatever their level is, and they're getting there and they're getting there. But it's allowed them to beat Dallas twice this season. It's allowed them to beat the Colorado Avalanche twice this season. And in games where they haven't had their best, the Los Angeles game, you were on that trip. You saw how bad that first period was. But they managed to survive that and still come out on the win. You were there in Vegas there. It was a bad game. But it was still one of those games where, you figured that the Jets were still in it. Like, the Jets are never out of it right now. So, it's one of those, the Jets are they're a good team. And I think the thing is, we're hesitant to call them that because last year they started out 9-3-3. And it was their best start in franchise history. And then we all know what happened. But this doesn't remind me, and it doesn't remind a lot of my colleagues and you, I'm sure too, that this doesn't remind me of last year. This reminds me of a different team, and we sort of a bit of an unknown because we don't know where it's going. But right now, it's going well, and I don't know if this is going to. I don't think this kind of stalls anywhere. I think this team just keeps on getting better as they go because they have the right structure now.
Yeah, it's been really impressive, especially with guys like, I like that dynamic between Wheeler and Perfetti. You got the old grizzled veteran former captain, and then of course you've got the young rookie Cole Perfetti, who his talent, his skill level is very high, and he had a big part in 2 of Blake Wheeler's 3 goals in the Colorado game. Just great little passes. On the backhand, you can really tell a skill player when they're making plays like that on the backhand. So, I mean, I think that those kind of things are what's really impressive to me, is where you take guys, and you touched on it, a guy like Wheeler, who simply looked kind of done at times last year, is back out there now, and he doesn't have all that weight on his shoulders of being the captain, and he's just going out there and playing, and he's getting the job done. I mean, he's scoring on shots from the top of the circle, which hasn't been the kind of thing he's done for the last few years. He's kind of a bang him in from the crease kind of guy, but he's doing different things. And Cole Perfetti is obviously in that Rookie of the Year conversation. I think Matty Beniers is going to have something to say about that in Seattle, but he's working his way into that conversation. And there's been really good contributions from role players on this team too. We shouldn't forget about Saku Menelainen with 2 goals the other day. I think actually Janssen Fialbi with his speed has really fit in well with this team. He's not a super talented, puck guy. He's not going to score you a ton of goals, but he can kind of play anywhere in the lineup because of that speed. And I like what Mikey Asimont has done as well. He's got that banging and crashing style. Kind of reminds me of a Brandon Tanev a little bit. And that's something that the Jets can use, right? They don't have a ton of that. So that's been really good. I like the physicality of Brendan Dillon on the blue line. I think Nate Schmidt is playing much better than he did in, you know, the last few years, including last year in Winnipeg. It's just, it kind of goes on and on. There's not a lot of guys where you're looking out there going, they're no good. And the fact is, even when they're winning, Rick Bowness has no issue with switching up the lines and putting various guys in various roles, and they've been successful in pretty much every way that he's looked at it. So it's really it's just something that's been very impressive. It's a lot left in the season. There's 3/4 of the year left. A lot can happen, but having survived, you know, the injury to Ehlers is particularly bad. Appleton being out for a while isn't great either. Having survived that and still being successful gives you a lot to, I think, hang your hat on, that this team can be pretty good going forward the rest of the way. And hey, it's past American Thanksgiving. They're locked in, right?
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, it's interesting that you say that, right? That because there are a lot of injuries can cripple teams, right? And the good teams survive the injuries. If you look at the Colorado Avalanche right now, I mean, they're without a lot of guys. Gabriel Landeskog, the captain, out of the lineup right now. And the list goes on with that team. And they're missing a lot of guys too. But they're also in the fight for second and first place in the Central Division. So you look at how teams kind of handle this adversity. Josh Morrissey said it best the other night when I was chatting with him. He's like, you know, everybody kind of knows what everybody's role is. And so when you move a guy like, let's say, Axel Johnson-Fjallby to the first line, he knows what he needs to do. It's the same as, you know, Morgan Barron moving up to the top line, or any of the guys, Mikey Eswat moving to the third line from the fourth line, or Manalainen and those guys, you know, kind of switching up between the third and the fourth and that sort of thing. All those guys know their specific roles on those lines when they're put in those positions. And that's one of the things that's kind of help this team go, because they're all playing you know, what they know. They just know what to do when they're put in those spots. And you know, there's no, again, the word that they kind of use, or the phrase is, there's no gray area anymore. Everything's black and white. And so it's simple, and sometimes simple is better. You know, this team just knows what it needs to do. They want to be a 5-man unit on the ice, and they're doing exactly that. And so yeah, they haven't had a good power play at times. Their penalty kill has been way up. You know, it's been so much better than it was last year, when it was, you know, roughly 50%, pretty much at this point last year. You know, they've found a way to be, you know, arguably better than the sum of their parts. But I'm not even sure that's true anymore. I think, you know, I think part of it, you know, is, yeah, like I said earlier, you're kind of hesitant to say how good this team might be, because you kind of worry about, okay, well, they had a good start last year, and they, you know, that we've been in this spot before watching this team, where it hasn't always kind of fleshed out over a full 82 game season. But it, you know, there's just a different feeling right now. You know, around the guys, around the team, everybody's confident. Everybody feels kind of inspired and motivated and all those things. And you know, sometimes you can't really quantify what that kind of means for a team. It's hard to kind of sit there and say, you know, put kind of how do you measure that? But you see it. I mean, you see it in the record, and I think at the end of the day, that's really all that matters in hockey is the wins and the losses. And right now, the Jets are sitting on 14 wins and 6 losses, 7 including the overtime loss that they had. But that's good enough for them to be fighting for the top of the Central Division, and one of the best records, one of the best winning percentages is in the NHL right now, more than just the Central fight. And that's something that you just have to tip your cap to. I mean, that's where the Jets are right now. The old Bill Parcells quote of we are what our record says we are. Well, the Jets are a good team, and I think it's been hard, not hard, but just it's been difficult to kind of maybe just kind of settle on the fact that they are a good team, because you're just kind of worried that, you know, potentially something's going to change, and it's kind of a bit of smoke and mirrors, but it's not that. And I think we've seen that through all different types of scenarios now this season. The Jets have been able to handle them, and they still have some pretty good players that are going to eventually make their return to this club. You know, you would think that would only make this team better going forward.
Well, as you said earlier, we could probably talk about this all day, at least for a few hours. There's, you know, even when the team's not playing well, there's a lot to talk about. When the team is playing well, there's a lot to talk about. And right now it's good times for Winnipeg sports fans, at least the ones that aren't getting in brawls during the game. But we'll see how all that shakes out. But anyway, Scott, a pleasure talking to you today about this. We will be back with more Jet Setting as the season goes along. For Scott Billeck, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching Jet Setting on winnipegsun.com.